Good evening, friends. Well, just getting better and better as time goes on. The shoulder surgery is actually starting to feel like it might have been worthwhile. I had the checkup Monday. Doctor said my arm's stronger than it was before I had surgery. Of course, that's not saying much. I couldn't do anything with it before, but it's been a long road. It's 12 weeks today. And in celebration of 12 lucky weeks of agony and sitting around and gaining weight, I started a new group tonight. And this is the introductory video, this new group, Rolls-Royce and Bentley air conditioning issues. Now, as I put in my description, we're primarily going to deal with refrigeration rather than air handling, but we'll work on air handling too. I mean, there's issues there that have to be discussed. If you don't cure them, you're not going to have good air conditioning. So we want to go through that, but I wanted to dispel a lot of rumors that are out there and a lot of misinformation that people have. Number one, the English don't know how to make air conditioning. I don't care if you drive a Rolls, a Bentley, a Jaguar, or a Range Rover. It isn't worth a shit, all right? Honestly. I mean, you can't run one of these cars in Palm Springs and be comfortable. You're going to be sitting there sweating in a really expensive sauna. So let's be honest. These things need some help. They need to be completely re-engineered. They need to, start over with a clean sheet of paper from scratch. If you have an older car, some of the Clouds had all the Clouds that were air conditioned at the time had the old 2-cylinder York compressor that was found on our favorite brand of American car, better known as a Ford. And they didn't work well on Fords, and they sure as hell didn't work well on a Rolls-Royce. Simply put, they were too rough. And on the early cars, the Cloud and S models with the 6-cylinder, they'd knock the crap out of the harmonic balancer on that thing, and it's not easy to do. It would actually peel the locks back on the bolts that secured the flange to the slipper clutch, and that's what that's called, is a slipper clutch. It's not a dampener like what we have on our cars now. It's actually what they call a slipper clutch. It's got a duck washer in it, and it's got so much tension on it, and it actually makes the flywheel, or actually the pulley, slip in order to take out the finer vibrations at the crank. And of course, being a 6-cylinder, they got a few vibrations at the end of the crank. Thankfully, it's a smooth motor, so you don't get a lot, but it's out there. It's way out. It's a long crank, and they've worked very well for many years. They were, a early invention that seemed to work okay, and that's the 6-cylinders run like crazy. But you put a 2-cylinder compressor on, and that thing will get the crap knocked out of it. So my suggestion always has been, if you see a 2-cylinder York compressor, you can tell it's got a couple of little fittings right smack on the top, and one of them's got, each one of them has a little cap you take off, and there's a little valve in there, and you crank the valve open or close depending on what you're doing, and that's how you can actually shut it off and pull those off the top of the compressor without losing any of the refrigerant that's in the rest of the system. That's how cool. They were called Schrader valves, but they're not. People don't know them as Schrader valves, but that's what they were years ago. We called them that 50 years ago. And, now they want to call them something else. But who cares? They don't exist anymore. They're not used. They're not practical. They don't have any place on these cars. So if you have a Cloud with the 2-cylinder York, be prepared to show it the trash can, because guess what? It's not doing you any good. It's bad. One of the things I hate with air conditioning that has been retrofitted, whether it's a unit underneath the dash or it's one of the vent units that they installed at a couple of dealers, like I think it was Satori did one and Inskip did one. They're atrocious. They did did blow through those vents that are in the cap rail, and they would provide an adequate amount of cooling. But the problem is that they put a real simple system in the side of the vehicle under the wing that had fresh air only coming into it. They should have installed it on the right-hand side where you had the recirculation, and that would pick up the old air in the back of the car from under the seat and bring it back to the air conditioner to be cooled. Much like our systems nowadays, when you put it on maximum, it's recirculating, and that's what it should have been done. But to change that over is a nightmare. I mean, really, unless you just are totally fanatical about it, or you're in humid climate where it's 97% humidity all day long. Well, you just keep it the way it is. That's what we've decided. The compressor goes on the left side of the motor. You run 2 hoses out in the fender well. You run your compression hose, the high side hose, to the condenser right through the side of the fender well into the grill area without ever seeing the hoses, and you bring it right smack back into your dryer and into your expansion valve, and have your service ports both under the fender. There is no reason why there should be service ports in the engine compartment so that you have to drag hoses over the paintwork just in order to service the air conditioning. That's bunk. There's enough room under there. I mean, honestly, you could put a 35-pound refrigerant tank in there and you'd still have room. So we don't want to do that, but that's where the point is. One of the myths that we have about refrigerant in air conditioning system is the fact that most people, there's a great deal of folks out there who think that R12, chlorodifluoromethane, the old stuff, it's been around since the 30s and 40s, they think that's good stuff. They think it's the best there ever was. And there's a reason why they believe in that myth. And I know when it first came out, when it first went away and we started getting the 134A refrigerant, I thought the same thing. And then I started paying attention to things because, I switched a Lincoln Mark V over to 134A, and it was fine going down the freeway. It was just great going down the freeway, cold as hell. You sit down at a stoplight for very long, and it's blowing 70 to 75, 80 degree air. So that was a problem. Yet I had a 55 Cadillac, and I just stuffed 134A in there and noticed those beautiful vents up in the ceiling. I don't know if you remember the old Fleetwoods had the plastic vents in the back window are kind of cool looking, and the vents out on the fender, because the refrigeration, all the air handling was in the back, and it would blow it up into the roof and move it forward, to the driving compartment, the driving end. And the air that was coming out of there was just icy cold. And I'm like, why is the Lincoln hot at idle, and why does this Cadillac blow cold air all day long? Well, it didn't take long to figure it out, because if you know the science of removal of heat, you'll understand that a tube and fin condenser isn't worth spit. And I'm talking about a round tube. We're talking about round here, okay? A lot of transmission coolers like that, a lot of condensers like that, useless. I mean, they really weren't that good with R12. It's just that, they balanced the systems for them. They actually engineered them with that kind of a condenser, so it worked. So now here comes 134A, and you're like, this doesn't work in here at all. This stuff's crap. I'll go back to 12 if I can. Well, you can't. There isn't any. I mean, if you find it, it's stupid. The biggest problem that you have is that the product has to be understood. I noticed on my Cadillac that the condenser had flat tubes going across it. Not round, flat. It looked more like, the tubes in a radiator. And that's called parallel flow. And what they would do is the tubes would come out, and they'd end at these little tubes at the end, these round tubes, and it goes straight down. So anything that turned to liquid fell right to the bottom, out of the system. Some of those go around, in a run, okay? You start at one end, you put the high pressure in there, and you're trying to get the heat out, and then some of it turns to liquid, some of it still stays in a gas, and all that stuff has to go through the system all the same, fall out at the bottom, and then it's just the cold stuff, the liquid, is slowed down by the gas. So that's not a good system. What you want is where the tubes all go across and go into the parallel collectors, and then at the bottom, you've got liquid, not gas. It's a much more efficient system. That pumps into the dryer. Some cars, they have accumulators, which doesn't matter right now for this conversation. It goes in the dryer, which does get moisture out of the system, but gets it ready and prepared to go into the expansion valve, and it lets out the pressure and absorbs all the heat. And 134A is extremely efficient. It's probably 2.5 times more efficient than 12. If my calculations of Boyle's law or close to even, reality. It's really efficient compared to 12. It's a far better product, but it has to have the right equipment and the right system. So in the car it goes. It does a great job of absorbing heat, does a fabulous job of absorbing heat, does a great job of getting rid of it, but you got to have something that can take it away, right? So back it goes out of the system. Some of them have, POA valves and STC valves and all that crap and VIRs and all that. That's in there. That's okay. I mean, that's fine. But a system is basically a compressor, a condenser, evaporator, dryer, and expansion valve. That's it. Doesn't really need anything more. You can have a switch on the expansion valve. When it gets too cold, shuts the compressor off and cycles back on. If it does, that keeps it from freezing. But the system, when done correctly, is icy, icy cold. And I've had people call me up and say, oh, it's 110 degrees outside and we're driving down the freeway and we're wearing sweaters in our car. Well, yeah, you wanted air conditioning. It works. There's another reason why 134 is better. Look, they use it in refrigerators now, and it have been for many years, but it's very efficient in a refrigerator. It has a completely different condenser also, just like cars do. So, basically I learned the hard way because nobody knew anything when they brought it out. They said, oh, change the fittings, change the oil, flush the system. Oh, change the hoses. They said, oh, it's a smaller molecule. It'll slip through the hose. Hogwash. I mean, this smaller molecule crap has absolutely nothing to do with its, ability to go through a hose or let's see, it absorb heat or anything else like that. It has nothing to do with it. It may or may not be a smaller molecule. For this argument, I really don't care. What I know is it works really good. All right, it works amazingly well. And what you should do is convert to it if you don't have it. That R12 ain't worth crap. It's a substandard product. It was made in it was invented in the 30s and 40s. Packard had air conditioning in 1941. Go see a refrigerator technician if it needed any work. Said right on the side of the compressor. And over the years, of course, the systems have adapted and been changed. And I remember the days when Cadillacs had 3.5, 4 pounds of refrigerant in them. The Suburbans had 5.5. And now you've got, these vehicles that are running around with, half a pound of refrigerant, and they're doing a good job. They've just made it more efficient. So do not be concerned about hoses. Do not be concerned about all the BS conversation about molecule size and so forth. 134A is better. It needs to have a better condenser. It also likes fans. It likes to have a fan to flow air through it. It does not appreciate stagnant air. Okay, even if it's parallel flow. I mean, you need a little bit more air than what you had just to make that condenser do its job. So, I always recommend with these things, get an electric fan. It doesn't hurt. It can't hurt at all. We did a cloud a few years ago, and that thing was so cold you couldn't believe it. I mean, the car was never cold. People were always dying. Everybody was sweating. And it went down to Arizona and it got sold, and the dealer just, was flabbergasted how cold the air was. And of course he should have been. I mean, clouds don't have cold air. They have crap compressors, or if they put a good one on it, they got a crap condenser. I mean, this car had one that was, about a third of the height of the grill. I mean, the radiator. And I mean, you know how tall clouds are. I mean, you guys, the radiators and the grills on clouds are very tall as opposed to a shadow. And there's plenty of room to put a good condenser in there. So there's no reason to put a huge load on the compressor and the motor because you have high head pressures. You can get rid of all that. By the way, head pressure is high side pressure. We, in the business, refer to it as head pressure, what's coming right off the head of the compressor. High head pressure is not a good thing. It wears out compressors. It grinds down on the motors. If you don't have the right amount of refrigerant in there, if you put too much in, you're going to get higher head pressures, more grinding down on the motor. And so one of my pieces of advice for you guys is to go down to Harbor Freight, get a manifold gauge set. It's got both gauges, high side and low side. Now, everybody goes down to the store and buys these little cans of 134A, and it's got a little low side gauge, and it plugs on there. And hey, that's a great idea. If you're me, I can do that. I know what symptoms to look for. I know what I'm paying attention to, what's going on. I can tell by the temperature in the hoses. I can tell all kinds of things because I've been doing this for 50 years. And as a result, I can get away with that. You can't. If you're not an experienced refrigeration tech that's been around the block, buying a canister of refrigerant is not a good idea, because you may have a low side and you're pumping refrigerant in there and it's making the high side higher and higher and higher, and it's grinding down. We had one that came in every time you turned on the air conditioning, the engine would stall. I think we got 4 pounds of refrigerant out of a system that shouldn't have had more than 1.2 pounds. That's scary. It was a car dealer. He just kept slamming it in there thinking, well, I'll add some more, I'll add some more, I'll add some more, because the low side's low. Yeah, but that's a symptom of something else. You need to know what the high side is. So go buy them. They're about 60, 70 bucks, I think, at Harbor Freight. Good thing to have. Wear goggles, because that shit hits your eyes. You don't have them anymore. All right? They look all nice and pretty once they heal up, but you won't be able to see anything. Wear glasses or goggles when you're working on air conditioning. That's really highly advisable. Don't smoke near it. There are some refrigerants that contain propane. They're a cheap replacement for R12, and when a line ruptures during an accident, cars explode. And after what my ex-wife went through from a propane explosion, I highly recommend that anybody that's got propane around them, doesn't smoke, doesn't have open flame, has a propane sensor somewhere that will detect propane should it start leaking, whether it's in your travel trailer or your motorhome or whatever. You need a propane sensor, because you don't want to have happen to you what happened to her. I mean, she was in her little trailer and lit the thing up, and it blew her out the door and killed the bulldog and pretty well singed the cat and the chihuahua. Yeah, not a good thing. Burned the thing right smack to the ground. So you don't want to do anything with propane, not in that system. Propane belongs in a tank, and it hooks onto your barbecue or your stove or your heaters, okay? It does not belong in your refrigeration system. And it works well, by the way. Don't get me wrong. It works phenomenal. But so just to rehash this, R12 is not a better product. 134A is. Most vehicles have insufficient condensers. That's the thing in front of the radiator. All air conditioning is absorbing the heat that's inside the passenger compartment, taking it outside and throwing it into the atmosphere. Okay, it's all it is. It's a heat transfer. Heat comes from the inside, goes to the outside, and this just continually goes around in this loop. All right, so just keep that in mind. All right, you need something to get rid of the heat, because you have a product in 134A that is more efficient at absorbing heat, period. I mean, it's reality. And I like it. I make the coldest systems you've ever seen. So you got questions, that's what we're here for. Throw it up there. I'm going to probably, once we get started, we'll probably put some questions in and stuff, because I only want Rolls-Royce and Bentley people involved, and I don't want everybody else out there, It's just, there's enough keeping our cars going without having to worry about everybody else. I'm in the suburban groups and the Tahoe groups and stuff like that, and the miles of stupid comments you get from people. And I'll give you, for instance, somebody kept complaining that his engine in his Tahoe would stop, just driving down the road, bing, it's dead. And he says, everything's shut off, the air conditioning shut off, the radio shut off, just like I shut off the key. And my next comment to that was, you need to take the top off the underhood fuse box right behind the battery and pull not only the cover off the fuses, but when you can see the cover, there's another cover that covers all the mechanism underneath, the plugs and such. You got to get that thing out of there. And then look, there are 2 cables coming off of the battery. One goes across to the motor, where there's a bolt, and it goes to the starter, and the alternator plugs in there. There's another wire that goes into that fuse block. That is your main service power from that wire. Okay, the other wire starts it, the other wire charges it. This one, you can't even run the starter if this one is knocked up. Well, I had problems with mine. I blew a transmission, and we put it back together. We couldn't get the shift out of 4 high. We had to do it manually. And I'm like crazy, what's going on with this thing? And it's always low. It's always having problems. So I pulled that cover off, and there was, the thing was sitting there. The bolt was backed out that far, and the wire's just touching the bolt. That's it. So I cleaned up the terminal there, made it all nice, because it's always got little marks on it and spark marks. It looks like it been used for a welder. Got it all cleaned up, put it back together, tightened it down, and had no problem since. So this is the recommendation I make to this guy that's, having stalling going on, right? And telling me the radio goes off. And that's my suggestion. He says, no, it's the crank sensor. So the guy didn't know what he was talking about to begin with. He's asking the question. Now he's telling me it's a crank sensor, okay? Really? Have you replaced the crank sensor? Oh, yeah, we put 3 on there, and it still doesn't work. I said, well, do you think maybe it might not be the crank sensor? Go look in the fuse block. I'm serious. Go look in the fuse block. And finally he turned around and he said, oh, shit, it was. The bolt was halfway out, and the wire is just hanging there. I said, that's what they do. For some reason, that bolt comes out of there. I don't know why, but it does. You know, gotta love cars. There's always something with these damn things. And I'll tell you, I love these Tahoes. These, you know, turn-of-the-century Tahoes. The new ones ain't worth a shit. So much stuff on them. I mean, how the hell are you going to ever fix them? I mean, you know, we try to keep up with it, but it's like nightmare. You know, I have a lot of equipment. I can program these things. I can do all kinds of things with them. But I sure noticed that that truck hauls ass a lot better since I got that wire buckled down. And then with this new transmission that's in there that I built, you just get, you know, a huge chunk of rubber going into second gear, which is fun because that's what we had in the days when we had the 400. You hammered it and went into second gear, chirp. Well, Tahoe does that. I'd like to see it doing four-wheel drive. I doubt that's going to happen. But getting back to the Rolls-Royces and so forth, you got to have a Tahoe to tow your Rolls-Royce around. So all I want to do is keep the Rolls-Royce guys because we're limited. We know what we're doing and so forth, and we have questions, and we're a small focus group. Getting everybody else involved in it just muddies the water because the more people you get in there, the more bozos you're going to have. And quite honestly, at my age, I'm tired of clowns, let me tell you. So, yeah, just, you know, check this site out and, you know, see if you want to join, do an invite, and I probably know you from the other sites and so forth, and I'll post over there, say, hey, look, we got a new one on air conditioning. So all the technical stuff just kind of goes hand in glove with the other guys with their technical stuff. And, you know, I hope you don't mind if I come in there and say, hey, I got this new thing. But we also have Bentley Arnage F-ups and fixes. I noticed I have 204 members today. I'm like, wow, what's happened? Well, I've been in the hospital and getting repaired and cut and chop and paste and all that other good stuff. Well, people came to the damn site is what they did. I also have another thing we started up. It's called Too Damn Many Projects. That's my YouTube channel where I'm going to be going through all the things that happen to us guys when we get a little older. You guys want to call us boomers and all this other shit. You fuckers couldn't start a lawnmower. Okay, we know how it works. We're the ones that invented the crap. Okay, you're sitting there with the phones doing all your stuff all day long. You don't even have the slightest idea why it works, okay? Just remember that, all right? When the world goes to it and that phone quits working, you 30-year-olds are going to be sitting there wondering what the hell happened. And we'll be cooking dinner. So keep being a smartass, all right? Doesn't work. Us older guys, we've kicked ass. We've taken names. We've had our names taken. We've had our asses kicked, you know, and we know what life's about. But there's certain things that happen when you get older. You slow down. All the projects, they get to be too numerous because there's only so many hours in the day. And apparently we don't work as fast as we used to. The brain doesn't work as fast. The body doesn't work as fast. Of course, you know, having neck surgery, shoulder surgery, and all the other issues I've had, let's be honest, I slowed down a little bit, but I'm going to get back up. I'm exercising all the time now. Got to get some weight off. And we talk about that too. But, you know, a lot of things to talk about. We'll talk about the cars. We're going to talk about projects, building little things and stuff to make life easier around the house. My remodel project, the mobile home I bought for my dad that I'm remodeling to sell. And, you know, things that we need to do to change life, to downsize, to make things more comfortable, make things easier, a lot of stuff. And, you know, if you're younger and you know, have the brains to listen to somebody that's, you know, been there, you should be listening to all the old people. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, I listened to them. I listened to all the old people. Sometimes I didn't like hanging out with them, but that wasn't, you know, I'm more fun than some of these 30-year-olds. And when I drank, there wasn't one of them that could drink me under the table. I get these smart asses. I mean, they're sitting there throwing up for 3 days, and I'm still drinking. And my kid used to tell, hey, you know, when you're cold and dead on a slab, Dad's going to still be drinking, right? You know that, don't you? Well, I don't drink anymore. I just quit. And don't have time for it. I like to spend my booze money on cars and, you know, wood projects and toys. And, get my wood shop kicked into shape. That's what I want to do now. I've changed. It's all different. And you changed too. Everything, your goals that you had 30 years ago are not the same. And that's okay. You know, we'll talk about that. So just a little blurb for what we're doing. Thought I'd, throw that in there, bore you some more. I'm going to say good evening because it's getting late. And I'm sure you would like to go about your business and not listen to me spend 25 minutes and so many seconds of your time running my mouth, but that's what I do. I'm real good at it. Take care, you guys. I hope you enjoy the new site. Welcome you contribute and ask questions and throw your ideas in there, and we'll try to be nice. It's hard. Take care.